back over here. All right, welcome aboard, everyone. I'm going live on. Introduce yourself, Garrett, while I'm screwing around.
Oh, well, I mean, I've been on here a few times, but my name's Garrett Stamport. I'm a fisheries biologist for Pristine Pond Solutions. I graduated from Texas A&M, and now I do private pond and lake management for a living. Basically what Shan did before he retired and moved to Florida.
Welcome back. Okay, and let me double check. I think, yes, we're good on Instagram. Sweet. All right, welcome aboard, everyone. I'm back. And like Garrett said, I managed ponds for a long time. And I don't manage ponds much anymore. I just kind of consult here. And today's topic is data interpretation. And I think the first place to start with the whole talk is really understanding what data is.
Sorry, there's a golden retriever sprinting around behind me.
Acting like an absolute menace. Back there.
Yeah. He's not supposed to be, but he's there.
He does his thing. He's cool. It's all right. So how would you define, like, how do you collect your data? And define data. Let's define data. What I'm getting at, what I'm flirting with is so often I get people who just hold up a fish that's, say, 20 inches long and say, this is healthy. And that is not how we do that. So let's try to define what data is and what fish health is and how we use that.
Yeah, so I would say data would be taking actual numerical measurements of fish. So that's going to be like your lengths and your weights. And then you can use that data to then calculate other forms of data like relative weight. I'm trying to think, is it PSD, proportional size distribution? That's another one. We don't really use that as often in private water, but that's another form of data that you can use from that initial raw data you can extrapolate information from that also. And then we usually take that information, we graph it, we chart it, we kind of figure out what the population distributions look like. And then that helps us make management decisions on where do we have gaps in forage, where do we have overpopulations with bass, certain size classes. So in short, data is numerical measured information, not just perceived information by looking at a fish, because it's not usually very accurate.
Right. That's an excellent point. Even I catch myself doing it. I perceive it to be a healthy fish, but when I measure it, I find something completely different.
Yeah. And I would say that
tricks me.
I would say the average person would consider a bass around 85% relative weight is what I've kind of noticed, around that range, 85, 88. That is what they view as a healthy bass. But then when you actually weigh it and measure it, it's very far below what a healthy weight should be.
Right. Yeah, we've just got a complete disconnect there with just general information that fishermen have about bass health. They got the length part. They understand that. All right. And they understand that it takes time to grow fish. They've got that. But somehow, like, the girth and the thickness isn't coming in. And that's where the relative weight comes in, because when we take the length of the fish and then we take the weight of the fish, so that we don't have to take the girth of the fish, because for several reasons. The main reason I don't want the girth of the fish is because it just adds more fish handling that is already horrible. We can go on a whole other tangent about poor fish handling. But if I take the weight and the length, I have all the information I need to make that, to create reliable data that I can then look back on 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And that's why you want to write the stuff down and put it into your spreadsheet, keep it in a notebook, even, whatever, so you can look back over time. And one thing that jumped out at me when you were speaking there, when you're talking about size distributions, that's so important. And what's so easy to miss when you don't write it down. Because, and again, I'm working off experience. I'm working off of dealing with people who are trying to manage their own ponds for 30 years and the mistakes that they make. But you won't notice like, wait a minute, we don't have any fish between 14 and 17 inches while you're fishing.
Right.
But that is apparent. It's easily apparent when you're collecting electrofishing data. Like there's a huge gap in the data. Like this size class of fish is just missing. We have not seen it for years. You know, we didn't see it last year or the year before or the year, you know, back in time. And that's why it's important to, you know, write these measurements down.
Yeah, and it just kind of gives you a better picture of what's actually going on when you can plot it all and graph it all versus just writing down numbers and looking at them on a spreadsheet. I mean, you can tell individually, okay, this fish is underweight, this fish weighs what it should, or you know, whatever. But when you graph it all and you plot it all and you can look at the fish as a population, then you can really notice the impacts.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And I, again, and just looking at it from my personal experience at work, and like maybe I won't, maybe not being lazy, but maybe just trying to test myself and say, all right, I'm going to go try to do this without the measurements. You know, I'm going to go try to take care of this. Cause like I said, I've had a lot of experience with messing with little ponds, little stormwater retention ponds and things where people weren't paying attention to it too much. So I could tinker with it, you know. And you just can't do it. Like I can't, like I said, this is data interpretation. And I think what I'm trying to say is it's really important to be looking at the data written down. There's something in that you can't, unless you write it down, you won't see it. And that's really important. And that's just, I guess that's the simplest way I can put that.
Yeah, well, it gives you time to process things and like think things over and come up with different conclusions. If you're just measuring fish on the spot and trying to interpret what's going on, yeah, we're not going to be able to remember or really visualize, you know, what we're seeing as we're seeing it. You need to be able to go back to it. And that's, you know, creating a database is equally as important as that first round of data. The more data you get over the course of time, you'll be able to notice trends and changes and improvements, declines. You're not going to notice that if you just look at the fish and put it back, because how do you know, it's just not an effective means of management.
No, it's not. The eyeball test is a fail pretty much every time. So in keeping with this idea of data, and fortunately for us, Garrett has been doing some, tell us about what you've been doing, man, with your sampling here. We got
well, just a lot of electrofishing, but the last couple of weeks, we actually had an opportunity to do what we're going to talk about today. And that was survey a young lake, kind of like a middle-aged lake. So the young lake was 3 years old, had been stocked 3 years ago. A middle-aged lake that it was roughly, the landowner wasn't exactly sure the last time they stocked it or when they had redone it, but about 8 years old. And then we had one that was well over 15 years old and hadn't experienced any management in between. So we had you actually had the idea, but when we laid it all out, it's really gonna be cool. We can show people kind of the changes over time that you see as lakes age when it comes to bass population distribution, size changes, relative weight changes, just how a lake ages without proper management.
Yeah, I think just in touching on that, we can break this data down a little further. But the blue charts here that you have are, we have the three surveys he's talking about. The far left is the newest lake. The middle chart is the 8-year-old lake, and then the far right is the 15. So break that down. What do you see in that, Garrett?
So just surface level, looking at the length distribution chart, you can clearly see from, the 3-year-old lake hasn't had a lot of reproduction happen. You're not really experiencing a lot of bass crowding yet. And you can see that in the chart. You see size pretty even, there's gaps here and there. And that could just be what happens in a survey. It's not going to be completely perfect every time. But you can see a pretty even distribution of fish from, 24 inches all the way down to, I believe that's like 8 inches. It's kind of small on my screen, but
yeah, it's about 8.
Yeah, you can see there's not really a pile up or an overpopulation at any specific size class of bass in a 3-year-old lake, which is what you want over the course of time, because that prevents overpredation on any of your forage fish. So you can assume, I didn't plot the forage on here also just for the sake of not having too many things happening at once, But if you looked at that forage data, it also lined up with the bass distribution. You had forage fish present at all different size classes. There weren't any size classes missing or too low in total abundance. Everything was pretty even as far as distribution goes.
Right on. And I think to further to elaborate, like if we look up here in the weight here, I think the first fish is 8 pounds. Have you listed right there, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
We got 6 of them over 8.
Right. So that would show up, here, and then at 118% relative weight. So yeah, I had a little gap in my data here. I had little gaps a few places, but I come out here to a population of healthy fish when I look down this list of relative weight. So the fact that I've got maybe a gap in here on some fish isn't concerning to me, because I see other fish larger in size still growing at healthy rates.
Right. And yeah, actually that gap is because that's kind of their initial harvesting was in that gap. They kind of had that preset before we came and did the survey. And so that little gap that you see is the size class that they were specifically targeting
right
from the lake.
Good point. That's a 12 to 14 inch. So that's basically your slot that you set to kind of help that distribution maintain this end. That's what we're trying to do, is maintain this end of the distribution. And if we go all the way over here to the 15-year one, look what happens out there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So, almost nothing.
Almost nothing out here. Right. So the 3-year-old lake, and again, if you think about that from like just general, like what you've heard people talk about, people instantly assume the older lake is going to produce the most big fish.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Opposite every single time. The older lake fall off just like that.
You can visibly see. And that was why we thought this was kind of a cool topic to cover, because you can visibly see the decline as the lake ages in the size classes of fish.
You can really watch it shift.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you know how to see it. And that's the thing, though. Do you know how to see it? That's the entire purpose of this discussion, is not to go and collect our fish. Yeah, great. We collected a healthy fish that's 118% relative weight. Great. We can pat ourselves on the back. But how can we interpret that data, right? Are we interpreting it properly? And I think this just lines up just beautifully. You did a great job with this, Garrett.
Thank you. Well, and so another concept that it kind of reiterates is that catch and release does not work. The first lake hasn't had time to overpopulate, and they've actually been doing some harvesting. So they're managing that lake. They're not gonna run into problems there. But the other lakes from the day they were stocked were never managed. There was no bass harvest that took place other than, a few people want to have a fish fry, maybe here and there. So you can visibly see that without bass harvest, you are getting a decline in the fish population. Catch and release is not going to work. You're going to overpopulate. You're going to see a decline, and you're not going to produce large fish anymore. Probably after about that 8-year mark, you can really see those old fish are aging out. That size class is falling off almost entirely. So
it's a real, what we're looking at visually here is an excellent visual representation of what I've watched many, many, many times. If you neglect your pond, and by neglect, I mean, that doesn't mean throw all the fish back is neglecting the pond, in my opinion. Okay.
Yeah.
That's not a successful management strategy. We're looking at it. Okay. So if we want our fish to grow past 16 inches on an older pond without having to do the drain and restock, right? So we get out here on this 15-year-old pond like this. How are we going to fix it? Am I going to start pulling these fish out and doing all that? No, the first thing I'm going to do is tell this guy, pull the plug, flush it like a toilet, drain and restock it, and get this distribution almost instantly with great growth, world-class growth, everything's cheaper, everything's easier. They absolutely will never correct this problem with the drain and restock. They'll go with the harvest. They'll try to do the harvesting, and a lot of times they won't harvest enough. And if we go back and look at the talk that we had with Preston, sometimes you can harvest all you want. It's just not going to fix it.
Yeah. Well, and then that kind of goes to the point is how long, if your goal is truly to have a trophy bass fishery, how long are you willing to wait to get that? If you're going to harvest and then correct, you can look. Texas Parks and Wildlife has data where they've kind of estimated the annual growth of bass in public lakes.
Mhm.
And your first year, you're looking at like 8 to 10 inches is what they estimate in most lakes. So your growth rate of trying to correct that fishery, even if you do bring the population back in balance, you now have so much more competition that your growth rate is going to be dramatically slower. It's going to take 4 to 5 years for those bass to hit 8 pounds instead of 3. And that's on top of harvesting first to correct the population. So you're probably 5 to 7 years out or more before you're really growing fish like you are in the other lake. In 7 years in the other lake, you'll have fish double digits.
Well, and then there's also the part where, what if you happen to have one of those places that you can harvest all you want and it's not going to correct, and you spend 3 years harvesting only to figure out you've just been spinning your tires the whole time, and you got to drain and restock it anyway.
Yeah.
So
no, I agree. Well, and then some. Yeah. No, it's not.
I've seen that more and more times, and more as the page grows and the social media thing gets bigger and more people see it. And then I've had guys on this page go, when I first started doing it, say, hey, I'm going out there, I'm harvesting crappie, I'm doing all this stuff, I'm doing it, and I tell them, man, you can go do it, or you can listen.
Yeah,
it ain't gonna work.
It's a hard sell.
3-4 years later, they're coming back. The DMs are starting to come back. He's like, dude, I drained it. You were right.
Yeah.
Well,
it's just, and I think there's kind of an emotional attachment to the bass. They don't want to kill them all, but in reality, that's what has to happen anyway. If you're going to correct it by harvesting, you're going to kill them all anyway. Yeah. So it doesn't really matter. But yeah,
I'm looking down the data set here, and again, the first fish on the 3-year-old lake is 8 pounds. I've got 8, 4, 5. Those are the first three fish. 3 pounds, 2 pounds. And there's another 8. There's 4, 4, 4, 3, and then just go to the 8-year. Just 5 years later, 2, 1, 1, 7, 0.8, 1.5, 2. 1.2, 0.4, 0.2, I mean, literally all the way down. There's not an 8-pounder down that list of fish, that entire list. There's not one 8-pound fish at year 8 when this lake is cranked. Already got them year 3.
No, I'm pretty sure that one had like a 6 and maybe almost a 7, but they weren't. I don't know if you can see the relative weights of them on here, but they weren't where they should be. I think they were about 88%.
Well, it's hard to see, and I'm going to point for anybody who can see the cursor. The average relative weight on the 3-year-old pond, I think that says 98.6, and this one says 88.9. So we've got like a 10-point almost difference just in averages, average weights, or relative weights. It's not really. I don't like using the word average because it's not accurate. Average in. If I say average, it indicates things are okay, and they're really not. I don't dictate. I don't classify this as okay. This needs work. This is unmanaged. Just like you said, this is unmanaged, and this is what you can expect from catch and release.
Oh yeah,
16.5-inch fish, not even 2 pounds at 78% relative weight.
Yeah, it's not good. The head is way bigger than the rest of the body.
Yep, that's not doing me any good. So I'm going to go.
I'm going to even further. I believe 83% relative weight was the 15-year-old lake.
It is 83.5% out here. So it's in not as drastic, but still another significant, statistically provable decrease over time.
Yeah, I honestly don't see most lakes that have decent water quality. I don't see it get much lower than that on average. You'll have some fish that fall way below, but bluegill tend to reproduce enough to keep them around that range. I have some pictures of some really emaciated fish, and I don't know what the rest of them look like, but most of the time, your average, I think the lowest I've seen is about 78, but it was really bad water quality. So it kind of made sense in general.
Yeah, and what you're talking about is the average relative weight for the survey.
Yes, yeah, of all the fish collected, the average.
All the fish average the relative weights, and he's pulling up that 83% again. And that's another little piece of data that you can extrapolate when you collect the data correctly. right? You've got all those relative weights. Well, now you can average those relative weights, and you can say the average relative weight of all of the fish, of all these 3-year-old fish, is 98, and all these 15-year-old fish is 83, right? You would never be able to know that without writing that down.
Right. And honestly, in that 3-year-old lake, there's a few of them that were just really underperforming. You had some 70% in there. And so those are the fish that get culled. So you take the culls out, and you're actually your average relative weight's going to come up a lot. Whereas the other ones, they're a little bit inflated because you have some pre-spawn conditions. So some of those fish are a little heavier.
Yep.
So the difference gets more and more dramatic when you start adding in other variables. But for the sake of just simple explaining how the process works, I figured that's a lot of information to throw out at one time.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I can look down that, and it's like, again, I'm just going to go back to that 8-pounder, that first one at 22.5 inches at 8 pounds. That fish is full of eggs. So I can tell by the data that what time of year you sample.
Yeah.
You're not going to get 118% relative weight in August, not usually, sometimes, but
not consistently, like you're going to see.
You'll get a few, and again, even in this 3-year-old lake, we don't have a whole. There's fish under 100, and 100's not my goal. Really, 95% on the relative weight is an acceptable range, and that's another thing that people don't understand is the numbers and how we interact and how we use them in the field. But there's a lot to this, and it's not simple, and it's really hard to articulate this to somebody who's never done it.
Right. Yeah. That's why the graphs and the pictures are helpful, because you can kind of see visible changes over the course of time without having to look at just a bunch of numbers.
Well, yeah. And it's the reason why you have to go to college to learn it. It's, it's not something you pick up on YouTube generally.
Well, and then the YouTube information is usually not accurate anyway.
Yeah. Is not good. But anyway, I don't know. I just love this. I could bust this thing down, forever and hours and go on and on.
I mean, I think it's really very useful for people to see, because a lot of the arguments that we kind of have to deal with this, you can kind of look at this data and disprove a lot of the arguments against, that you fight in the comment section all the time. So it just really, it's very useful to show people, this is numbers, this is data that was collected very recently. This isn't old data that could be argued it's outdated or anything. This is within the last 2 weeks. This is all fresh from different ponds across Texas and Louisiana. So, and I've got a bunch more of this that you could just keep stacking, but very few of them look like the one on the left, the 3-year-old lake. Most of the ones we get are
out here.
wow,
very few fish. And you can actually see on this chart, if you guys look really close, like the individual data sets out here. These bass, these are little bass out here, right? Those aren't little ones; those are big ones. Yeah. But these are little ones here, and these are big ones here. But look at the distribution. Come over here to the 3-year-old lake. That distribution, not only is it track above the line, these are our fish that are above relative weight, right? Look at these. There's not even a fish above the line really in 8 years. And there certainly isn't one. They're starting to significantly drop below it at 15. And there's absolutely hardly any fish bigger than like 18 inches out here on 8-year-old lake and 15-year-old lake.
Yeah, they're just the data goes from being out wide and just gets condensed more, and then down towards the bottom.
And what people have to understand too is there's no bias like fishing bias. Because people could say, well, you're just not catching those fish if you're fishing for them. We're using electrofishing equipment.
Yeah. And honestly, all of these lakes that we surveyed, we had really, really good conductivity. That 3-year-old lake, we were pulling fish out of 14 foot of water.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Mid-February. Yeah. We were from way down there. So it's not like we're missing
that 3-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah. We did. Oh, no, I didn't stock it.
You didn't stock it?
No, they had stocked it. And
it looks like they got 50 per acre in there. Did they stock 50?
He's supposed to send me the information. He hasn't yet.
Yeah, I bet he stocked 50.
They followed most of the state standard stocking recommendations. So, my guess is 50.
Yeah, he'd have more of those fish at like 118% if he'd have done 40 like I did.
Yeah,
because my head is a little heavier than that, but that's okay. That's to be expected.
Right. Yeah. And if we would have stocked it, we probably would have done a little differently. It's probably either 50 or 75. I'm not exactly sure.
Yeah, it's high. I mean, I can tell because at 3 years old, there's a 73 in there, there's 87 in there, 74, 80. You know, there's some pretty lows in there.
Yeah, and they took out probably about 400 pounds of fish last year.
Yeah. So I mean, you could see, and wow, they already took out 400 at 3-year-old.
It's a 30. Well, he says 400. It's probably more like 250 because they never actually weighed it. But it's a 35-acre lake. So
well, you can see they knocked the hell out of the slot.
Yeah, no, they did.
Yeah, they got them right there. And see, and for anybody who's like this, these fish to me are forage. It's okay that he has this data on them and everything, but I'm not super concerned of my super small, like 10-inch bass and under. Most of those get eaten. Like all those that are sampled are no longer with us. I promise.
Yeah.
As soon as they went back in, they were gassed up. They were too slow and they were toasted.
Yeah. With how many bigger bass are in there? Yeah. No, they're definitely.
No, they're gone. They're gone.
But yeah, they're gonna try to switch up and harvest a little more scientifically and do it more based on relative weight rather than just a slot limit.
Right.
The average person that goes out there is still gonna harvest more on a slot limit, but for the main owners and the people that are with him, they're going to try to do it a little more scientifically because you can see there's a lot of fish in that 16 to 18-inch range. So they're probably going to try to knock that down a little bit.
Yeah, let's pull those. I can't quite see that. I wish this thing, I didn't quite screenshot it good. That's okay. All right, back to the 8. There was what's that, 24? That's about a 24-inch bass. I don't see it. I might have got cut off at the bottom. I was hoping I could see its relative weight on that 23.
Oh,
I bet it's low.
Yeah, I think the biggest fish in that survey was like an 8.4.
Now, one thing you will see on like this 8-year-old lake, all right, you see, like you have your 16-inch fish falls right here. So all your bass basically fall under literally 2 fish above 16 inches. That's a pretty standard shotgun survey everywhere you go in the Southeast United States. I promise I already did it.
Yeah.
But a lot of times these fish out here, these kickers, these 22, 24, 26, if he kicks it up out here, he'll jump up and be way up here. So you'll have all this trash fish, all these skinny bass, and you'll have one monster that's really high. And what's going on there is he's eating that female's eating all these bass and getting real heavy. And that will trick guys into thinking, because they'll catch that one fish or see that one fish every once in a while. It's real big. Oh, the lake's fine. No, it's not. The lake sucks. Okay. Just because this one fish grows good doesn't mean the whole lake is fine.
Yeah. Well, and you can see that in that survey, a 6 and a 7, if you're catching that fishing, most people would be like, oh, this is a great bass lake. But then you never catch them again because, there's 8 of them, 5 of them in the whole lake, and there's 250 that are less than 15 inches, So it's just
exactly.
And then you look on the 15-year-old lake, and those fish aren't there anymore because they aged out and they died.
Yeah. They're actually it's right to the 14-inch mark. But really, what you're looking at right here, I guarantee these 12 to 14s, all these fish right here are a decade. All these fish are 10 years old. They're stuck and stunted. Like when you see it drop like that from 14 and it just goes away, all those fish, they're not going past anything. They're stuck in this size class. And that's, when I see a data set like that, I'm instantly thinking drain it.
Yeah. Well, and how do I put the forage distribution on here? It's the exact inverse of everything you see on the bass length distribution. So,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there's no 2 to 6 inch bluegill in that 15-year-old lake.
Right. And what he's saying, guys, is like if we put the bluegill chart right here, these size fish that these fish are eating are gone, right, in the set. And then you'll see the bigger bluegill showing up because these size bass can't eat these size bluegill. So you'll have a good population of bigger bluegill. And that's exactly what this is, and exactly what catch and release creates a trophy bluegill pond.
Yeah, and that's actually what he's going to do with that pond, because he didn't really care that much about fishing in general anyway. His wife likes to fish more,
right?
And So after talking to him, he got really excited. There's some really big red ear in there. So that was his favorite fish of the whole survey.
Oh,
So
there you
I was like, all right, well, you're already set up for everything you want. So let's just manage it for trophy bluegill, and we'll take in the rest of the big bass.
Right. And that's a great point, because I'm sitting here dogging it like, no, this is horrible. This is not what you want. And it really isn't what you want. I don't really want to see. I want to see a few more healthier, bigger fish than this in a healthy pond. But, you know, if it's an individual landowner's preference to have a trophy bluegill pond, hey, that's set up for it. Throw a feeder on that bad boy and watch it rock.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's going to do. So, there's already a couple bluegill around a pound, a little over, because it's got some other problems. But yeah, I told him, I was like, man, you put a feeder on there, you'll grow some 2-pound bluegill easy. So,
yeah, that's perfectly set up for that. So again, one man's trash, another man's treasure, right?
Yeah, it really just depends.
We're still dealing in I guess using the term unhealthy is probably incorrect, because we're really still dealing with a healthy situation. Our fish aren't dying. They're not like, but again, if you're a bass fisherman,
not ideal.
It's not even close to like really what it shows is when you're preaching catch and release, it's a complete lack of understanding of how this works.
Yeah, because this is exactly what happens. If you didn't touch that 3-year-old lake, that's what it would look like.
That's exact. I mean, and I have thousands of examples that's exactly what that looks like. I am positive if I had any money at all, I would bet all of it. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter how big the lake is. It'll happen 170 acres, 2 acres. It doesn't matter.
Nope.
They will overpopulate. The time it takes to overpopulate might change a little bit, but that's about it.
That's about right. So
because that's kind of another argument I think you see often is like, well, you know, that a private pond, that's different. Public lakes, you know, they're really big. That won't happen. You're not going to have overpopulation. But
that 21-inch, here's that 21.25. So that fish right there on this chart is right here, and that's coming in at 79% relative weight. You know,
yeah, you're talking about which
15-year-old lake. I'm looking for the biggest fish to try to pull out there. I mean, we're looking at a 21.25-inch bass that doesn't even weigh 5 pounds.
It's the one that was smaller, like an inch smaller, weighed more.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. The one under it. It's 3/4 of an inch shorter at 20 3/4, and it's 475. It's a 1/4 pound heavier. And that's the kind of weird things you see in when bass get stunted out like that. Like, it doesn't make any sense that the bigger fish is skinnier, right? But yeah, it does. When you do this for a living, it sure does.
Yeah. I mean, it really, at that point, doesn't really matter, because those fish are not the problem, or really, you know, trying to fix those 2 fish is not going to fix your lake. Nope. There's a lot more going on that has to be addressed. It really doesn't matter to me what those fish weigh. No. A lot of times they are above relative weight, like you said, because they're just eating all the other bass.
I'm surprised they're under in that one, actually. That usually you'll see them, they'll be the heater, man. They'll be thick and heavy and healthy, and somebody will catch one every 5 years or something, and that's proof that everything's great, you know?
Yeah. No, and honestly, a lot of them in the surveys were underweight, even the bigger bass. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But there's no forage other than giant sunfish and very, very small sunfish.
Yes. And that's the gap that the stunted bass population that we just described creates. Those middle sunfish just disappear because the bass are eating all of them. There's too many of them.
Right. Yeah. So something that's cool about data like this is, even if you didn't collect forage fish, or if you didn't collect sport fish, based on looking at the population distribution of one or the other, you can kind of assume what the other one's going to look like. Not the best way to do that. You definitely want to collect data on both, because there are situations where it doesn't line up, but in most cases, they're going to be almost a perfect inverse of one another.
I think in our world, you know, in pond world, we don't have to worry too much. You know, I think bigger lakes, you might get into seeing weird charts like that, but I don't know. I've seen, like you said, the charts are going to be the exact inverse. And again, like you come here to the 3-year-old lake with a nice distribution of bass. Guess what? It'll have a nice distribution of bluegill too.
Yeah, no, it did.
Yeah, it's so like it's easy to see once you learn how to see it.
The only time I've seen it get a little messed up was when there was a severe overpopulation of crappie mixed in, and there was almost no bass. So the bluegill population was actually doing decent, but every bass you caught, which wasn't many, was severely underweight. So if you looked at those things, you're like, man, these don't go together. Good bluegill abundance, low bass abundance doesn't usually translate to bass being underweight, but there were crappie everywhere.
Competing species, though. Yeah. And I mean, I bet they're like that, weren't they?
Oh yeah, most of
large
them
size,
4 to 8 inches. Yeah.
Super
small.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I remember one time a guy was talking to me about it, and he was from California, and I saw this once the 90s, man, way long time ago. Some dude bought a pond in Georgia and stocked it with bass, literally bass. That's it. He built it and just put bass in it. He didn't know. He didn't do any research. He just didn't know. And it was pretty old, years old, not 10 years old, but it was years and years old. And it only had bass in it. And literally all the bass were at 6s,
Wow.
5, 6. And they would jump out of the water and try to catch the dragonflies. They were so hungry.
That's crazy. I have seen. So we did a survey in a 3/4 acre pond, and we took out 96 bass, and it was a similar situation. They were all like 6 to 8 inches long. There was a few that were bigger that were, I guess, the initial fish. I don't know, but there were bluegill in there. But those bass, there were 96 of them between 6 to 8 inches out of that little pond.
Not good.
No.
It's funny though. Again, fast forward like 30 years, and I'm talking to some dude in California on here, and it's like he's talking about watching bass jump for dragonflies, and I was like, I've seen that once in my life, and they were severely stunted. One fish got over like 7 inches in that pond, and he came back with, dude, I've never caught a fish bigger than 7 inches out of that pond.
I mean,
I was like, holy shit.
Like, well, you know your problem.
Exactly.
This is a random thing. There's a lake in Florida that has a lot of like creek chub suckers in it, right?
Yeah, the one behind my house.
Yeah, and you said that one throws off a lot of big fish.
More tens than any lake in Florida.
Man, I surveyed a lake this morning, the most chub suckers I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's where we're going.
Now it was very overpopulated bass wise, but we got a few 4s, and dude, they were fat. But we were catching chub suckers that probably weighed every bit of 2 pounds.
Yeah, so get those stunteds out of the way. Let them climb up on those chub suckers, man. It's gonna be on in there.
That's what I told the guy. I was like, man, we get some of these bass out of the way, those fish are gonna put some weight on, because the chub suckers are so long and narrow.
I mean, like trout.
Yeah, but it was interesting because I've seen them in ponds before, but usually never more than like 5 an acre or something like that. They were everywhere. I think we ended up with like 50 of them in the survey.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You were close to the coast?
No, we're middle of Texas.
Damn. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where they came from. There's a lot of vegetation in that pond. That's the only reason I can think of that they're still alive. But dude, they were everywhere. And
I wouldn't expect to see them in the middle of Texas.
Yeah, I mean, they were spawning. Do what?
In the floodplain, or any kind of river?
I think there's a little creek that runs into it. Yeah, it was in Palestine, Texas, so like East Central Texas. I don't know. It was interesting. I'd never seen that many, and it was literally probably the most abundant forage species in the lake. More so than bluegill. I mean, it was probably pretty close to the same total abundance, but I mean, usually they're like way down.
Yeah, no, you don't usually see them like that. Now, I mean, out in places like this where they're, it might be different, but in ponds like that, no, I've never seen that before.
Yeah, I thought that was very interesting. So I have a feeling there's some bigger fish in there that we didn't see today.
Oh, I know there are. And how many acres is that?
16.
Ooh. Yeah, you gonna be in Fat City in a couple years on that one.
Yeah, so that's the goal. We're gonna put a hurting on. Well, we did today. I haven't looked at how many bass we took out, but I want to say it was probably a little over 100, somewhere around there. It was quite a few.
Yeah, that's
But,
a pretty good day. Y'all were out there a while then.
yeah, about 3 hours.
Yeah.
But they were well. The other problem is there are some crappie in the lake, which I'm not happy about. But it is what it is.
It is what it is, like you said. Yeah, I mean, good luck finding a pond that doesn't have them.
Yeah, not an old one. Someone put them in there at some point and was like, or if a creek, honestly, if with the chub suckers being in there, if there's a creek that runs into it, they're going to get in there anyway.
Yeah.
But the goal is to get the bass big enough where it doesn't matter. So we'll see.
Yeah.
A couple 4.5s was, they look good. I mean, both the fish were in good shape. So smaller ones weren't, but we'll see how much weight they can put on.
Oh, you'll be good, man. I think that'll be an interesting little project right there.
Yeah,
I like stuff like that where it's a little bit different than normal,
Yeah, not just bluegill red ear bass, or some shad. Man, we last week we pulled a 9.66. That's a big fish.
That's a big fish.
But then in that same area where we pulled it from, gizzard shad, just monsters, probably 1.5 pounds each. So you know what it was eating.
Oh yeah.
Not many gizzard shad in that lake, but some big ones.
Was it on the steep bank?
No, it was that whole pond was really shallow. So it was kind of like right where it dropped off. Like average depth is probably 4 foot in the whole thing. And it's like 6 acres.
Yeah.
But that one deep hole where it actually drops down to like 14.
Yeah.
Yeah, we pulled it right out of there. It was
what a surprise near the ledge, right?
Yeah, it was a big fish.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Pay attention to that, dude, because I swear to God, like you'll get like a 6th sense for it or whatever. You'll like, I could do it. I'm just be like, they're gonna be on that bank over there. And
the landowner was very excited about it. And so what's crazier is we pulled that fish from down there. We went straight to the bank, weighed it, measured it, took a picture with it, and then we put it back in the water. Well, as we were like, kind of rejuvenating it in the water, turns out we were parked right next to a bass bed. There was a male on a bed right there. Well, while we're trying to, just make sure she's good to go, the male is like courting her while we're doing this. And we let her go and she swam off. Well, then all of a sudden we turn around as we're weighing the rest of the fish and she's spawning in the bed right after we shocked, like right next to us. That was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. Right after we just pulled her
right after you just sampled her.
Yeah. And then we put her back in and she swam off and the landowner was like, hey, look, she's back. And right on the bed with that male. And we were like, what is happening right now? She pulled her out of like 12 foot of water and here she is going, oh, I guess it's time to spawn.
Well, might as well spawn while I'm over here.
While I'm over here. And then, I don't know, that was the craziest thing I've ever seen. I don't know if anyone's ever seen that before, but.
That's a new one on me.
Yeah. Well, it was weird. It was a very weird situation.
But
yeah, crazy. And then 5-10 minutes later, she left. I don't know. It was very weird.
Yeah. No, and I've seen that, and that's the part that too. That guys will start talking about the spawn like it's this one and done kind of thing. And no, I've on my ponds those big females are. Sometimes they'll have markings, that you can identify them: dark spot, bad lip, whatever. So on my little ponds, I could see them in there,
Yeah.
And you see them over there one day, and then you'd see it, and then you'd be like, is that the old dark spot tail over there on this side of the pond today? Like they're not in the same place, the females.
No, I think they've pretty much determined that most of the time they'll do partial spawns, several partial spawns for like genetic diversity purposes. I mean, I don't
know think about it, that makes the most sense.
Yeah. I don't know that I've actually read a lot of papers on it, but I've always heard that. So
I mean, I would think that year in, year out, based on my experience, you're not going to get like probably 8 springs out of 10. There's going to be some screwy weather that's going to mess with the spawn a little bit anyway.
Yeah. Well, we had that already here this year.
Yeah.
It was like real warm for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And the fish were all pushing up shallow. And then we got a cold snap where North Texas, I mean, they got to like 12. at night, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're all back deep, and now they're coming back up again this week. So it definitely messed with them.
Yeah.
But
And I mean, that doesn't hurt the spawn. You know, those the females don't drop the eggs. The males just chill. Everything comes back on in a couple weeks when the temperature gets right again. You know,
it does mess up crappie though, doesn't it? I've always heard that they'll kind of like abandon their spawn. That's why they're cyclical. It really depends.
Yeah, it does on them. And you know, I never was disappointed when they missed.
No, no, me either.
But you know, and all the years that I managed ponds with crappie in them, there weren't too many years they missed.
No, not in lakes. It probably happens more so because you can get more dramatic fluctuations.
And I think too, probably like different forms of competition for the crappie. You know, it's not just bass. There's, God, you know, whatever, yellow perch and everything else. Yeah,
whatever.
you know, just I think. Well, it's got to impact them somehow, having all that diversity. You know.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. That's why ponds, more diversity is not better in most cases.
That is so hard to teach people. They they so badly want it to be like this.
The lake.
Yeah, the Great Lakes. We're going to stock it like Lake Huron. We're not.
Yeah, we want channel catfish, blue catfish, bass, crappie, yellow perch, whatever, you name it. I don't know. We can't really have yellow perch down here, but
who wants them?
I've seen them in Georgia. They were pretty cool over there. They didn't look very good, but they were there.
Oh, we got a question coming in on the Instagram side.
Oh, I don't think I can see that one.
Let's see. TK from the Dirty V writes in. He currently works for the CDFW at a production trout hatchery, but a bass guy at heart. Appreciate what we do on socials for bass management. Wish California would care a little more. Yeah, I hear you, TK.
I mean, that's kind of universal. It's not just California. It's pretty widespread.
Yeah. I mean, you know, I think what it runs into there is like when what we just did here, when I was just talking about this is not good, this is bad, you know, putting like a stunted bass population in a negative frame. And I shouldn't do that because you might want a trophy bluegill pond, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Not necessarily a negative thing, right? But you know, there's just I don't know. I really appreciate where this guy is coming from though, on his trout hatchery work, because I used to volunteer at the trout hatchery in Georgia at the Chattahoochee River. And that brings up something really interesting. I'm going to go off topic, but I just think it's cool. So back then we had browns and rainbows, right?
Right.
And stock them in the river in the Chattahoochee behind Lake Lanier in behind the dam there. And people, you know, catch trout. And it's because the water comes out so deep that it can support trout. There normally would be no trout there if it wasn't a tailwater behind a major reservoir. Well, over the years, old Salmo Trutta, Mr. Brown Trout, somehow, and again, they opened the dam up for power generation every day we're like the Mall of Georgia is. It is a significant power source for North Atlanta right there. And somehow over the years, the trout eggs have gotten firmer and brown trout started spawning in the river and they don't stock them anymore.
Oh yeah. Cause they were having, they've
got, that's not native, naturalized brown trout population breeding that they don't even stock. And when the water goes up 8 feet, 9 feet when they generate it, it's not a little bit of water coming down the river.
Yeah.
How in the hell those trout are spawning? They're not supposed to be, but they are. And
that happens a lot more. Fish get moved around by both state and non-state, more so non-state now. But yeah, they move fish around a lot, and they usually do things they're not supposed to.
Oh, there's my buddy Kev. What's up, Kev? We go out west once a year, do some fly fishing.
Okay.
He's making a joke about the balls of fire. Because I took Kev fishing. He wasn't much of a fisherman. I met Kevin at he teaches out in East Oregon, teaches film and stuff. And he didn't been trout fishing very much. So we went to the Chattahoochee right there, right by the trout hatchery. We walked past the trout hatchery on the way in, as a matter of fact, and started fishing down there. And then Kevin really got into fly fishing. He's a really good dry fly fisherman. But yeah, he's a good friend. Good to see
fly
you.
fishing is something I have never really done. But
it's fun, man. And you know, I did it on my ponds back in the day because I was telling Mike Bucco, I was telling him when I was fishing with him, like I was so close to like being like a lure designer. As soon as I went to fishery school, I'm like, all these lures are too small.
Yeah.
Like you guys aren't fishing with the right size crap, you know?
Big bait, big fish.
Yeah. And I like Mike because of that, because what did we got here? Here we go. We got it right here.
Well, you know, they always say that the lures they make.
That's a fish lure.
Yeah. That's a gizzard shad right there.
Yeah. And that's the 11-inch trick shad right there, baby.
That catches some big fish.
Dude.
3 pounds and up.
Yeah, they'll smoke it. I was fishing that thing right around the corner at the other day at the there's a spring that comes in. They call it the Blue Hole, old Blue Spring in there.
Okay.
And I throw it up to the bank, and I'm bringing it. Boom, 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 boom. That trick shad just is jamming, and I can see the fish tracking behind it, and it is 6 inches wide across the back.
Golly.
And I was going, oh hell yeah! And I'm just I've learned enough that when they start doing that to speed up.
Oh, really? Because they feel like it's going to get away from them.
Take it away from them, and it'll trigger them, right? So as soon as I put the gas on it, I saw them coming, and I've got maybe 10 more yards before I'm completely at the boat, and the water's gin clear, so I can see. And I'm just jammering that thing back, and I'm thinking I'm gonna reel this all the way up I'm gonna bust this rod tip figure eight it like a muskie before I give up. That's a big fish tracking behind it. And about the time I thought that, man, this little 3-pound sucker comes off sideways, just jacks that thing. I said, damn it.
He came out he was watching from way down there, probably.
That little 3-pound fish hammered that 11-inch trick shad. Just smoked it.
He's trying to not be 3 pounds anymore. That's a scary
right? I'm like, man, you had to do that, didn't you? Just had to do that.
Yeah, the other one's smarter. He's like, I'll take my time, make sure it's something that I'm wanting to go for. But yeah, like you were saying earlier, they make the baits too small.
Yeah.
But I've always been told that bass baits are designed to attract fishermen, not fish.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point, you know.
Yeah. It worked for me when I was big into fishing in high school. If it looked good to me, I bought it. I'm like, yeah, I think a fish would eat that.
Yeah.
But what was the logic behind it? Was it actually thinking what a fish would eat, or what I thought looked cool?
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. I'm probably the latter.
Yeah. Exactly. Because that
reminds me of the G-Crack boys with that bellows gill of theirs. I looked at that thing. I was like, oh, I'm ordering that. I was on the computer to Japan. My original thought on the 5.8 bellows gill was that will either hammer them or not catch a fish.
And which did it do?
There's not going to be any in between on that bad boy. I believe that thing is going to work, and I ordered it. But it was like this dude was on. I don't remember who it was. Some guy bad mouthing and calling it a gimmick. Look at this junk they're selling, you know, and. I didn't think so. I was like, I don't know, dude. 30 minutes over at the watershed reservoir, I had one almost 8 pounds.
Golly!
The first day, first lure, first day, I just paddled over to the rock point, and I was like, there's some over here. Usually, whack. Probably third cast. I wasn't even there very long.
New favorite bait.
Yeah. Yeah, the 5.8 bellows gill became my new favorite in a hurry.
You say I feel like I've seen you post about it before. It is an interesting looking bait. It kind of looks like a giant leech almost.
It does, and I swim it like a flounder.
Oh, really?
I swim it sideways. Yeah, I put it on a swim bait hook and swim it sideways.
Huh. I wonder if it looks more like a fish in distress than like, or I mean, don't think it matters to a bass, to be honest. If it moves and they think, yeah, I can fit that in my mouth, they're gonna eat it anyway.
I can promise you, man. I put that thing in. I'd say probably 30% of the time they hit it on the initial fall. They don't
Okay.
don't do nothing but fall in front of them. They toast it up.
It's like a Senko.
Yeah, it really is, and it kind of moves like one. But dude, and what they'll do too for anybody listening, I got a good review on the Bellows Gill on YouTube. If you want to watch that, but don't cast. Let's see, how can I? If the boat is here and the bank is here, don't cast straight at the bank with that bait. Cast on an angle, because that fish is going to come this way with it. They're going to eat it there and they're going to rock it towards deep water. And I've never in my life seen a bait trigger big fish to swim that far that fast.
Huh.
Like,
now you're making me want one. I haven't fished in like 2 years. It seems like I'm always like,
learned. I mean, when you throw it straight at the bank and that fish grabs it and comes towards deep water coming straight at the boat, you can't catch them.
No.
They put you in slack line.
Yeah, you
by
can't
the
reel
time you
fast
do
enough.
catch them, it's done. They already figured you out, and it's gone. And usually, what happens is they jump and spit. You don't get a hook in them. But you make that angle cast. Don't cast it straight at the bank, because they're coming to deep water with it, and they're coming like a freight train. They're not coming. It's not like a worm bite where they go bop bop and they just do easy. No.
Yeah, just pick it up and kind of swim away with it.
No. They grab it and they go. And don't make a long cast with it. You can bomb it halfway across the lake. It's so heavy, but you really don't want to, because, like I said, you're gonna need that fish, that hook set power on that initial fall. You don't want that initial fall to be too far away.
Yeah, you make me want to go fishing. I live by a lake too. It takes me. I have a boat launch in my neighborhood. I could get to the lake in 5 minutes, and I haven't been fishing in like a year and a half.
See, that's why I'm a good influencer.
Yeah, I know. But it's like, I don't know. I'm in ponds all the time. I'm around fish all the time, but I'm never the one fishing for them. Well,
I know, man. Do you do this too? Have you gotten to be like a snob, where when you go to the lake and you know the fishing's not that good, you don't even bother?
Well, I get that way with electrofishing sometimes. I'm like,
yeah,
man, I already know what this is going to be.
I don't even want to do it.
Yeah, let me write you the report right now.
Yeah, I know, right? Let's print the one out from last year.
Yeah, no one's touched this lake in 25 years. Well, all right. Dude, too much. This dog with his toys. He's usually not in here with me, but that's funny. Yeah, he sees me close the door to this office, and I don't know. He wants to be in.
That's a signal. That's a signal. He needs to come in.
Hey, pushes the door open. I'm like, no, stop. And he just keeps, but whatever.
He just imprinted on you. That's all.
Yeah. Oh, he's a 9-month-old golden retriever, so he's just a mess.
I'm sure he doesn't shed much. That's probably nice.
Dude. You can't see it, probably. Thankfully, it's so bad.
It's starting to pile up into the screen.
Oh man, it's so bad.
Ridiculous.
I like go to leave my house, and I'm like, I can't go to a job like this. You got to find a lint roller, get the hair off. I'm like, dude, you're ridiculous.
They're the best dogs, though, man.
Oh, he's great. I've never had a dog like be as obedient and behave as well. Yeah, shedding about 6 months turned into a nightmare. Yeah. At first, I was like, man, I thought golden retrievers were supposed to shed bad. He doesn't shed. About a month later, I ate my words, because he sheds a lot, but it is what it is. He's all right.
Yeah, that's good though. I like dogs. Oh, you know what came to mind too? I thought about it and then it went away, and now it's back. Rex Moncrief on Facebook, the Outdoor Channel, I think, the Outdoor Network. I don't know. I'll tag you on him. He's in North Louisiana looking for electrofishing.
Okay.
And I gave him your name. But
Shreveport area? We have a few more in Shreveport we got to go do. So
yeah, I figured y'all had something going over there. So but if you want to, be proactive and reach out to him, I'll get you in touch with him. He's on. I know him through Facebook.
Okay.
And he does a podcast. I think it's called the Outdoor Channel, the Outdoor Network. I'm bad. My memory's so bad, man. I turned 52 the other day, and it's all going downhill.
I don't think it's an age thing. I have the same problem. I'm like, what was I gonna do?
Oh, God.
Just so much going on at one time. I don't know.
Well,
it's
it's been right at an hour, and I've been cutting them off at an hour. I've been getting good viewership, though. I don't want to make it too long, you know?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
But no, I really appreciate you coming through with that, man. And that was really good data.
Yeah, no, I think that's something that we can start doing more often. I think that would be cool for people to see because it shows an actual picture. You can watch what happens over the course of time rather than just listening to people tell you about it or just looking at a bunch of numbers on a screen where most people are like, all right, I don't care. But with the graphs and everything, you can look at it and go, oh, I see the difference. I see the change. So maybe the next one I'll put together is I'll have to look and see what all we've got, but maybe we can look at some that like we've had bass. We started culling bass at a certain time, and you can watch the improvement over the course of time.
Yeah, that's awesome right there. I had so much stuff that I could have done like that. My problem was when I did it all, most of it anyway, there weren't access to digital media like this.
Yeah,
you had to record it on a VHS and transfer it to digital. And I wasn't that guy.
Not an efficient means of doing that. But yeah, really anything that you can think of. I mean, we're running the shock boat all the time. So
yeah,
I probably have data to fit whatever you want to talk about already.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, I'm gone back. I'm swung back over to Instagram before I swing off of here. And TK's, he's saying that he saw the he appreciates the response, and they have a triploid browns now that they're using to combat that brown trout reproduction. That's interesting. Never heard of that. That's cool. But I had another one from Ian. What size trout did we stock in for our supplemental stocking? And they were 10-inch trout, Ian, and you were going to want to get the biggest trout that you can find.
Yeah, so your small bass aren't the ones eating them.
Yeah, you don't want to stock small forage for the exact. I mean, it ties right back into when we were talking about this guy, right? If we're trying to grow big bass, we need big forage, and to bring. Actually, we could bring back in our data set there for a second. And what's the problem you'll see out here is you'll have, like I said, if you have this many small bass, you're going to have a bunch of big bluegill opposite of that, and then these will be gone. On the small bluegill will be gone. There'll be
I guess I should have put the forage distribution on there too. I just thought it might be too much at one time with like graphs everywhere. They're like, I don't know what graph to look at. So
no, I think that's perfect. So the idea there, Ian, though, is we don't want these size fish to be able to eat those trout. So that's why we put them in so big. And you get them as big as you can get them. And there's a couple places if you want to DM me, like Tellico Trout Hatchery in Western North Carolina is a good one. I used to get a lot of trout from Tellico. But there's several, you know, you're going to pay for them. You know, it was $1,500 for that load of fish.
How many trout did you get?
It would be about 300 pounds.
I mean, really, that's not a bad price. 1,500 for.
I didn't think it was delivered. No, I don't. I think
that's with delivery.
Maybe it was 2. I don't have to ask Clint. Actually, I'm going to go back. It was, what did he quote? No, it was $8 a pound delivered. 300 pounds would be 2,400. It would have been 2,400.
That's still not bad.
No, it's a cost effective. And the funny thing about it is that amount of load of fish, I put that in 2.5 acres of water, right? That's going to cause a dramatic change. We'll be seeing fish like we saw at that other little pond.
Yeah.
Right. Some big bass in a real little pond because of the trout stocking.
And then like
amount you'll see in like a 10-acre pond, it still has a positive, you know, not as much, but it still affects the bass growth.
Yeah. Well, so he put in 300 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
So A&M did like a feed train or pelleted feed study on bass, and I don't remember what the main forage base was for each different pellet that they made, but I know one was primarily rainbow trout, and it had basically for every 3 pounds it was a 3-to-1 conversion ratio from the rainbow trout to bass growth. So you might have just grown 100 pounds of bass, really, if you extrapolate it out that way.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And when you consider, okay, we stocked 100 bass, and all of them are probably better than 3 pounds at this point. So we could figure they could all probably eat. They could all chew that, right? But that's all going to happen like in the next 30 days, 45 days. So all those trout are going to be consumed, but that means all my bigger bluegill aren't being consumed.
Right. Yeah. Right around the time they're all going to spawn and everything.
Right. So I'm pumping up my bass artificially on huge forage, but secondarily, I'm also saving a lot of large forage, and that's really important. That's where you get your fish over 10. You have to have a significant source of large forage, and that's the hardest part in a pond. Ponds don't have large forage. It's really hard to grow 1 million 1 pound bluegill, because that's what you need. So that's where the shad come in. That's where the gizzard shad I've used come in. That's where the trout come in. That's where, when you're managing trophy fisheries, you have to have large forage. And yeah, if I stock gizzard shad in that pond, I've done it before. I'll probably do it on this one too. You're going to shift it. You're going to take away a lot of the small forage. Just like that chart shifted, the bass shifted over time this way. All right. When I stock gizzard shad, it's going to shift the forage chart all towards 8-inch forage. The bulk of the forage is going to be out big for my big bass. That's where I want it. And I'm giving up reproduction. I'm letting bass starve to death, basically.
Or get eaten anyway.
Or get eaten. But I'm shifting it to big fish, which has to give the fish, a small fish, a disadvantage. There's no other choice. It's one or the other. If I want to give the small fish the advantage, I take away the advantage from the bigs.
Yeah, no, that's true. And pond population dynamics is so, you can go down the rabbit hole such a long way of like why you can't supplementally stock your way out of bass crowded just based on like the amount of pounds of forage it takes to actually grow fish. And it really, that might be something we need to talk about on here too, because I don't think many people understand that, like how many bluegill is 10 pounds of bluegill per bass.
Take a video the next time you pick some up.
Okay.
Just take a recording of what 20 or whatever you picked up, 10, 20, 50 pounds, whatever you picked up. Just take a video of it and send it to me.
Yeah.
And then imagine like that's only going to grow one fish 1 pound.
Yeah. And they can
when you see how much 10 pounds is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And when I think like a 2 to 4 inch bluegill, or you just say like an average 3-inch, I want to say it's like 300 fish per pound or around there, 250, 300 fish. So 2,000 to 3,000 bluegill that one bass has to eat to go from 1 pound to 2 pounds. And
if you put 3,000 bluegill out in a school in the pond, you take anybody who doesn't know what they're talking about, then they'll look at it. They'll all be so impressed with all the bait fish.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, look at all the bait. It's like, that's not enough to grow squat.
Yeah. No, but that's a very true statement. I've heard people say, oh, well, there's a lot of minnow, like the gambusia, mosquito fish. Like, oh, there's plenty of forage. I see some bluegill and there's tons of minnows everywhere. And I'm like,
no, that's not how that works. And then
are they ordering
them from you? I'd like to order some gambusia to feed my bass.
No, I won't sell anybody gambusia. I'm like, no, they're going to show up anyway. Usually, right? They're already there.
Yeah,
and they don't. No, people sell them for mosquito control. That doesn't even really work. Like,
I read a study that bluegill control mosquito larvae better than mosquito fish.
Really? That doesn't surprise me. I mean,
bluegill are highly aggressive.
If you want to control mosquitoes, don't have a lot of vegetation. There's your answer to your problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let the fish be able to eat the larvae. It doesn't matter how many fish you've got. If you've got an acre of solid vegetation, you can have a lot of mosquitoes
Hashtag spray everything.
Yeah.
Watch them have a panic attack.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys.
Vegetation management's a whole different animal.
Oh, well, there's a whole nother group of just complete misinformed nonsense that's like, that's not going to work. You know?
We're just gonna have to start running through topics and hitting one at a time, and just, this is a myth, here's why it doesn't work. This is a myth, here's why that's not true. I feel like that's the only way.
And I thought that it would be going a little faster than this, honestly, but it's just not.
Well, you just have to, you'll have to do all those videos and then start back over with the first one and do it all again, because new people,
Yeah. And I get guys, I say that to guys all the time, and my DMs have been following me a while, and they'll make a comment. And if you're watching me right now and I'm doing that to you, there's a reason. It's for the new people. I know we talked about it. I know we know what we're talking about, but if I make a comment that's so obvious that like it looks like, I don't mean to insult your intelligence. We just have to, if you have a good post, I'm going to put a comment under there to help the people who don't follow us.
Yeah, well, because you get new viewers with every post.
Yeah.
So you could post the same thing every day and you're going to get new viewers who haven't seen that information.
Yeah.
You're probably going to lose a lot of followers, but
yeah, right. Well,
to that point, you have to reiterate information, and it's really hard. Like, these podcasts are good because we can really go beyond what you can put in the text of like a Facebook post or a short video. You have to speak in such generalizations on the internet, and then you get people arguing back with you with these very specific scenarios. They're like, well, what if you have 15 10-pound bass? Like, they just create this absurd, and like, yes, in that situation you would be right, but I have to speak to the 90%
reality.
Yeah, I have to speak to the 90% of what's actually happening out there with the post, and that's just unfortunately how it is. Otherwise, it would be a book, not a Facebook post.
Yeah, so, I know exactly what you mean. It's like as soon as I post, I don't know what it is. It's so strange. As soon as I post something like crappy or bad in ponds, I don't stock them. Oh my God. You know,
well, my neighbor had a pond.
I caught this fish, you know, which I can tie that right back into where we started. You caught a 24-inch fish, but how much did it weigh?
Yeah, and how many of them are in there?
And then, all right, I'll go ahead and tell you, when you put that 24-inch fish down and it's 85% relative weight, and then you put another like a 6-pounder down and it's around 85% relative weight, and then you do another one, maybe like 3, 4, 5 decent fish, and they're all around 85% relative weight. I don't need a shock boat to tell you have a crappie problem.
Yeah.
That's how many times I've done shocking and track these things. I can literally look at the numbers on 5 measurements on 5 bass and tell you what's in the pond.
Yeah. It's very consistent over and over and over and over again. That's why sometimes it's like, man, I already know what I'm getting into.
You know what I found interesting too was when I ran my shock surveys, like the first year I got my shock boat was in the fall, in the late summer, early fall. And I ran a shock. As soon as I got it, I went and just did a bunch of electrofishing, you know?
Yeah, because
I got that data, and I looked at all that data. But I'm thinking of like 2 17 to 20 acre ponds in particular. Did not electrofish a crappie up. Didn't see one. But had all the data set numbers that looked like crappie were in the lake, and it didn't make any sense to me.
But in the fall, it makes sense.
Well, what I did though, I did it that year, and then the next year to get another sample exactly a year later, because the HOA guy was real anal and wouldn't let me do it in the spring when I wanted to do it. He's like, "Oh, it hasn't been a year," and I'm like, "Okay, you're like, not the boss of this, but whatever."
Yeah. Yeah.
So I had to do it the next year at the summertime, and I didn't catch crappie then either. But then the following year, that guy was gone, and I got in there in the spring, and it was loaded with crappie, and I thought it was really interesting that I went for 2 years and never electrofished a crappie, but I could see it in the data set.
Yeah, they'll hold up in deep water. So we did a survey on a big lake, and probably early September, end of August, and we hammered the crappie. And I'm like, "Yep, you got a bad problem.
Oh yeah,
we should not get this many in a survey."
Oh,
I mean, we
well,
were
and that's
lighting
the
them up
thing. That
everywhere.
lake, it was a bad problem. You know, it was
Yeah.
stunted badly, stunted crappy. And there wasn't anybody. I had some guys who could catch them, and were going out there hard. They didn't do anything to it.
No,
Couldn't do it.
we have a guy, he took 700 out of a 7-acre, 7-acre pond in a year. It was the same story the next year.
Yeah.
His situation was actually unique, and we actually talked about that one on the phone. But he had like no bass in the pond. We did a survey, and there was like, man, we were out there for like 2 hours, 3 hours, and we had like 8 fish, and they were all way underweight. So that's the one. The crappie were real small. We put in feed train bass at about 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds, and we surveyed it again this year, and the crappie numbers were way down. And the bass were all fat. The forage population was always there, but there was no bass in the lake. But he killed 7 otters in like a month after he had moved in. And so we think that's kind of what happened to his bass population. And then the crappie took it over. But all the crappie are real small. So now the bass are hammering them. So we're going to see how it goes. I think he's going to end up being okay. I mean, he's always going to have crappie, but I think his bigger bass are going to be all right, because most of those crappie are real small. They have grown some. Now the average crappie is probably about 7, 8 inches instead of 4 or 5. But those bass are gaining weight so fast. I think they're still going to keep wiping them out. So it'll be interesting to see. But
you're going to find that you're going to have to manage ponds that way. Like, again, a guy's not going to drain it and fix the crappy problem. You're going to have to fabricate a solution just like you did.
Yeah, the feed train bass, it worked really well. His crappie have. I mean, I think we caught the first time we did the survey, we pulled like 40 something crappie out, and this last time we got like 19. So it's a big difference. Same time of year, and the bass, a lot more bass, and the bass were all way healthier. Obviously,
do you see any reproduction
in the bass?
Yeah,
we actually, the first year we didn't. We saw like 2 fish.
No, I wouldn't expect you did that. I think the crappie are wiping them out on you.
But we did see a few small bass this time.
That's good. Yeah, you're on the right track.
And and another thing that showed that big improvements is he had put threadfin shad in that lake, and there were almost none the first time we did the survey. This time they were everywhere, and they were big. You know, the average threadfin was probably 5, 6 inches. I mean, they were huge.
That didn't hurt him. How many acres is that place?
7.
Okay. Yeah, that didn't hurt him at all. And that was a good time. That's a good idea. Like, if you're in that situation and you're adding forage like that, it's a perfect time to add it before you start adding the feed train bass, not after.
Yeah.
You know, it's good to stagger those things out. And it's good to have a guy like Garrett, a biologist, on to help you with those strategies. I can't tell you how many guys would screw their lake up before they got to me.
Yeah.
You know, just by being giddy, they get like kids on Christmas, and they start spending money like it's wild.
I know. Brand new lakes, and it's heartbreaking to see sometimes that it's like, man, I don't know how to tell you this, but we've done a lot of them where the landowners didn't really care. They it was more for their grandkids. So we literally flipped they were going to grow big bass, and they stocked like 200 an acre, just got by recommendation, by the way, from anyway. And so we just flipped it, and we started managing it for trophy sunfish instead, because every bass was 8 inches long, like on the dot. Every single one of them was the exact same size. So we're like, we could try to fix this, or we could just change the trajectory of it. And they were like, oh yeah, we like that idea. It's just for kids anyway. So
there was a guy, he's gone now. He's died. But there's a guy in Georgia for years, and I don't do the name calling or anything, but he used to recommend 1,000 bass per acre.
What? That's crazy. I've heard 1,000 catfish per acre, and I have seen there's more of a local guy that stocks hybrid sunfish in trophy bass lakes, and it drives me insane. I can't tell you how many bass ponds we have surveyed and have been ruined because the only forage fish that's in there is hybrid green sunfish. These poor people, I mean, they're like, yeah, we stocked the pond last year. We want to see how it's doing. Or 2 years ago, and we get in there, and I'm just like, man, I don't even know how to tell you. They're like, yeah, we had someone help us stock it. and it's just green sunfish, or hybrid after hybrid after hybrid. All the bass are small. There's like one bigger fish, and I'm like, man, it honestly makes me mad because the people are just so heartbroken.
I
They
know.
just spend this money on this lake,
I
brand
know.
new. They're all excited, and it's essentially just kind of ruined.
A
And
con job, really, is what it is.
yeah, every bass lake he stocks is just like that. I've had people DM me on Facebook when we made like posts about hybrids green sunfish are not a good forage option, and I've had people DM me like, "Hey, man," and they all come from the same place, and I'm like, "Dude, we've been there before and kind of talked to the guy, but it's not going to change.
No, it's fish sales, man, and I
It
mean,
happens all the time."
oh, it's the norm
Yeah.
in the
I have
fish.
yet to see a pre-made pond package that's any good. They're all
I
terrible.
only dealt with one fish hatchery my entire career. Well, I did buy some fish from American Sport Fish, so I definitely will throw their name out there and say that they're a reputable fish hatchery too. But I only dealt with Brian and Owen and Williams Fish Hatchery for that reason.
Yeah. Well, most of the time, those packages are not, those places don't do lake management also. Because
No,
when you're doing lake management, you have to sell results. They're paying you for an outcome. They're not paying you for fish. They're paying you for the outcome. So
right.
if you can't deliver on that, then you no longer have that customer.
Right.
So it's a different dynamic. You don't usually see it as often with lake management companies, I would say. Probably not. I'm sure it happens, but not as often. With lake management companies, more of what you get into is selling people fish when they don't need them.
Yeah.
Like, oh, here's some more.
That's a slippery slope too, because I've been in situations where guys want to spend money.
Yeah,
It
no,
makes them feel good. They literally taking the words out of their mouth. I'm like, dude, that is not actually going to help very much. Now, is it going to not help at all? No, you're stocking fish. The bass are going to eat the fish. Okay, it's going to help some. I don't know if it's going to help measurably.
no.
Like, I don't know if I can
probably
measure that. We measured the relative weight of the fish before and after the stocking, and we saw an increase. Like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And literally, more than one guy go, but it makes me feel good.
Yeah, no, and in those situations it's different. But when the script is not, hey, this is probably not really going to benefit you, like when you consider how much of, like, kind of explaining the whole situation like you're talking about. But I've seen it the other way where they're like, oh no, you need to stock these fish. It's going to change it.
Yeah.
Like a bass crowded lake. They're like, oh yeah, you took some bass out. Oh, you're good. You need these fish now. It's going to fix it. And then I'm like, no, it's not. No, it's not.
That's not how that works at all.
No, you put 4,000 bluegill in there. They're all gone. Sorry.
Yeah.
You took out, you have 200 other bass in that 1 acre pond. Those bluegill are gone. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. I can't even explain how many times I've seen that happen.
Yeah, I know. It happens all the time. And it drives me crazy. Now, some people, like you said, it's more of a tax write-off. They're like, I like watching the fish go in the pond. I got to spend the money anyway.
Hey, I sold that man those fish.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean? But as long as they
I did not frame it as this is going to get us there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think that's the difference. If
it is
you
the difference.
Start framing everything like this is the solution to all your problems, all you have to do is spend this money. And I just can't express in words enough. Money won't fix your pond if it's out.
No.
Bill Gates ain't got enough to feed bass.
You got to kill.
Elon Musk ain't got enough money to feed bass.
Yeah.
He'll go broke.
Yeah. Or you'll just have a fish kill eventually. You'll overload. Yeah. You're going to reach a breaking point and it's going to,
No, it's a balancing act.
Yeah. You've got to kill
balancing on a wire act. Really.
Yeah.
If you get right down to it, you're on a wire with it. And you can go bad in either direction when you're balanced on a wire.
Yeah, that's true. But it's a lot easier to walk that line when you start over.
Oh, God. And just start it right. Just start it balanced.
Yeah.
You know?
Then all you have to do is keep it that way, not try to make it that way.
It's so hard. And again, Preston, I was such a good interview with him, and his project, his master's thesis was about correcting the bass population. And he literally, out of the 2 big lakes that he worked on there, found one he couldn't correct.
Yeah, I liked that thesis. He sent it to me.
Yeah, it was good. He did a good job.
Yeah, he's a cool guy.
Yeah. I was on his podcast a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I saw that. I haven't listened to that one yet. I've seen him on yours, so I need to go watch that one. But yeah, he's a cool dude. I just DM'd him on Instagram, and he was like, "Oh, about his masters," because I watched it.
Yeah,
Watched y'all talk about it. I think not the most recent one, but the one before, where he talked about it. And so I was like, "Man, I want to read that." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And he sent it to me.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, he's a cool dude.
Yeah. That makes me proud too. Like have to like help other guys, like other scientists out, get going and get information to people out there. There's an army of us, they don't even understand how much people tell me all the time, "Oh, you're the best fish guy." No, I'm not. There are so many better fish guys than me. You don't even know. I might be the best fish guy. I'm not the best fish guy I know.
Like, I'll take the compliment, but yeah.
Yeah, appreciate it. But no, man, there are some dudes that, really, really, really know a lot about this.
Yeah. Well, that's why the networking part's important. It's just, yeah, sometimes it gets, we've talked about it before. You have to do it the right way. Otherwise, it's a lot of like, I can't tell you what I know.
Mm-hmm.
I experienced that a lot right out the gate. Well, actually, while I was still in college, just trying to like meet people, talk to them, figure out what the industry is, because you don't really get a lot of exposure to the private sector in college. It's kind of like the black sheep, like no one talks about it. So the only way to get exposure is to talk to people who are in the industry. And the good thing is there's a lot of good guys out there, you being one that I met when I was in college. I remember I messaged you, but there's a lot of them that they're not interested in helping you out.
No, you're going to run into that. And, that's just going to be like certain people's mindsets on how they think business works,
Yeah.
And my mindset on that is, my first initial mindset on that is the stuff that we're discussing in fisheries management isn't giving any trade secrets away. Nobody makes them.
You can find it all on the internet.
I mean, if I was making $10 million a year with this information, I wouldn't be giving it for free here. It's not something that you're going to get rich, doing.
Yeah. Well, and you're not going to get rich by not sharing it either, because if you know something no one else knows, how are they going to get exposure to what
exactly
you know?
like
no one's going to hire you for it.
Trade secrets too.
Yeah, there's no such thing. It'll be like the 3 ponds that you get to do it on, and then no one else knows about it, so no one's going to be able to hire you for it.
Right. Who cares? Yeah, you've done nothing. So I don't care. Take everything I ever said or did and use it. And that way, my work meant something.
Yeah.
And we're not starting over, relearning what I had, to learn. Now we can advance, right? And that part of it is important to me. And then the other part of it is just making people aware that we're even here.
Yeah. That's a big thing. Almost no one knows, because I'm from a small town, but nobody even knew when I first told people what I did for a living. They're like, "Oh, that's a really good idea." Like they thought that I came up with it. I'm like, "No, this is the thing.
It's a real job." Yeah.
A lot of people don't know it exists. So that's one thing that hurts the industry, is just not enough exposure to, hey, if you have a pond that looks terrible, there's solutions out there for you. Or if you want to grow giant fish in your backyard, because that's going to be a scarcity in public reservoirs. The longer we go, the more and more rare those are going to be. This is your solution, but don't just buy $100 worth of fish, put them in your pond, and think you're going to grow a 10-pound bass, because it don't work that way.
No, but that's the other part that's really important to me too, is the fact that we are helping people out like that, and they are learning. And it's something, because like you said, these public lakes, that's the part to tie it all back. Like you talk about this stuff, and all of a sudden this guy's trying to take it and make it apply to a 50,000 acre lake. I'm trying to talk about pond management. and he's trying to move the goalpost on me over here and
Yeah.
change what it is.
I
Okay.
mean, the
I
concept.
don't care about your public lakes. They are cooked. They ain't coming back.
No, the concepts apply.
Okay. I can fix ponds and small lakes. That's why I'm here.
Yeah. Well, that's going to be the go-to option for fishing because there's no catch and release is such a big thing. Or even if people don't believe in catch and release, they still don't keep fish. So it doesn't. They're like, well, somebody else will take them out. It's like
all those other people are taking them out. All these mystery bank goblins are keeping them.
Catfish and maybe crappie are really the only thing that get any kind of fishing pressure as far as harvest. Bass don't. We might grow some really big crappie in the future with stunted bass populations. We might start breaking new records that way.
Maybe. But I don't know. They stunt so bad they limit themselves.
I know.
I don't know. They don't do good in ponds.
No, but I just mean like these bigger reservoirs. If you have the bass population's way overpopulated, you might start growing some giant crappie and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and I have seen floating around on the internet here. They're 4 and 5 pound specks drifting past my feed all the time. So again, you've taken your opinion of how you think bass fishing management works from bass fishing, not from fisheries managers.
Yeah.
And I can't even explain that. Like, how many times have you seen this where you say, hey, we want to improve fish growth, and then all of a sudden everybody wants to sink brush piles?
Oh, yeah.
That's improving catchability. That is not improving growth.
Or I've had people explain, everyone's got a 10-pound bass in their pond. I hear that all the time. But hey, some of them do. I'll give it to them, but not as many that tell me they do have one. But I've had a conversation with someone before, just in like a random place. I think I was getting tires replaced on my truck. But he told me that the reason he had a 10-pound bass in his little 1-acre pond was because he had a lot of vegetation.
Right.
So that kind of goes into your brush pile thing.
The opposite of how that hurt, but whatever.
Yeah. And but some battles are just not worth fighting. And I was just like, cool. Like, that's awesome. I mean, I hope that he does have a 10-pound bass in his pond. I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
But I doubt it.
I highly doubt it, unless he put it for himself, and then it probably weighs 7.
Yeah, that happens a lot.
Can't tell you how many times I've seen that. 1,000, 2,000.
Even once bass go over 5, the pounds from 5 to 10 to 12 to 14 all get blurred. They're all the same. A fish bigger than 5 pounds might be 14. It might be 7. Who knows?
I know, right? It's funny that way.
But to be fair, if you've never caught a fish that's actually that big, you don't realize how big they really are.
Yeah.
Like 10-pound bass, that's a monster fish.
Oh yeah.
Like,
I mean, when you feel like you lip them and it feels like you're limping an inch and a half piece of PVC.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the bottom lip doesn't even feel like normal. It's like a tarpon more than it is a large bass.
And the teeth, like you better have gloves on or you're not gonna have a thumb.
Yeah, like you can't even, like, it feels like your thumb can't get inside the mouth because this bottom lip is so big. So fat, like a piece of pipe.
Yeah, that's a big fish. Or when you pick it up and its mouth just like
it's got that double hinge.
Yeah, you're like, golly.
Gee. And again, how many 8-pound fish if you look at that mouth like that and you think back all those years and you're looking at a mouth this big and you think that bass is eating this.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
What do you think this mouth is for?
Yeah, maybe a whole school of those that are in like a giant ball where it can just suck the whole thing in at once.
Right? I don't know, man.
Like, no, that thing is eating like ducks off the top of your pond.
Yeah, I've watched them do it.
Yeah, no, we have a lady that brand new ponds. She wanted to stock them, but she did not want bass because she loved her geese. And the place that they moved from, she was having bass eat her geese.
Yeah, that geese at the end of the line, he's in trouble.
Yeah, gone. So we
Yeah.
were like, okay, we'll do something different in here. But yeah, no, they do. They pick them off. It's kind of crazy. The little ducklings, geese, yeah.
Absolutely, they smoke them.
They make lures like that now, but I've never used one. So
and that's funny you say that because Oliver Nye had me on his podcast, Big Bass Dreams, and he's got one of those walking bird.
Oh, I've seen that.
Yeah, dude, that thing's badass. And the funny thing about that thing is I'm fishing one day, public water fishing, just in the good lake. There's good fish over there, but I'm not catching that day. And getting some casting practice in, and I hear kerplunk, and I hear all this noise, and I'm looking around, what in the world? Well, sure enough, it was in the spring. A bird fell in the water and was swimming back to the bank down the point. And I'm like, oh, you're not going to survive that. You're toast. Like, I was just waiting for
like a
cast, but he didn't. He actually made it to the bank. But the way that he swam with his wings looked just like those walking baits. It was a perfect mimic.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So if you're fishing in the springtime, watch down the bank, watch the edge of the limbs that hang out over, and run those walking baits down that edge right there, especially if there's a shade line on that edge.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
But Oliver throws some big bass baits.
Oh yeah.
Or he has been lately. Like,
oh yeah.
Big ones.
He's got some. He sends me a few like big ones like that.
Yeah. Like he's going back after that 17 again.
Absolutely.
I can't imagine what that fish looked like.
Dude.
I would love to see one like that.
I know, right? I had never seen one that big.
I don't know that you can grow that in a pond, man. I don't know. It'd have to be big.
14 and some change. I've seen them go, in 20 acres of water. But more north of 15, no.
I think you'd have to have at least 50 acres or more.
I'm talking about in 30 years, I've seen 2 go that big.
Yeah, and, that's a rare fish anyway.
Yeah, or super rare. Super. That's what messes up people's ideology about this. What they think about this, like the internet guys are holding up big fish all the time. So
but there's millions of people that fish every day, and there's 100 of them on the internet that have a picture of a big bass.
Right. And some of us understand statistics better than others.
Yeah. No, but that's a true point, is that social media is going to feed you the big fish, not what they catch most of the time. They've been fishing for 20 years before they caught that fish. They've probably caught 10,000 bass or more.
Yeah. I think it skews people's mentality and ideas into thinking there's a lot more big fish than there actually are.
Yeah. It takes a lot of food to grow a fish that big.
A lot of food.
Like, I think if you could lay it all out on what it would actually take,
you need a bunch of gizzard shad is what you need.
Yeah. Gizzard shad really are.
Yeah.
Every leg I've seen with giant bass, there's some gizzard shad in there.
Oh, what a surprise. Again, wait a minute. Are we in a 50-acre lake with a 11-pound bass? Okay. I take all that money I don't have and bet it. Yeah. I bet it is a gizzard in that lake.
Oh yeah. It's crazy. And they get so big so fast. I think it's 8 inches in a year they can put on.
They do, yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen it 7-8 inches in a year, no problem. But you know what? Have you noticed? Well, you might not have maybe noticed. I don't know. When you put them in small, put them in Clint's, they won't get 18 inches.
Really?
Mm-mm.
Oh, when you already have a bass population established?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But when you don't, man, they can make a lake muddy. I've resold a few ponds that just hit the boat and there's just gizzard shad everywhere. And it's like, well, I know why your pond's muddy.
Yeah. Man, you better have bass in place.
Yeah.
And you don't. Now, one thing I have noticed too, and take it for what it's worth, that's not scientifically proven. It's just an observation over the years. But going back to those crappie situations where you got those crappie in the pond or small lake, adding gizzard shad helps. I've seen them get in.
They were something like gizzard shad or egg predators. I've never really heard.
I think what it is they can compete their reproduction doesn't get wiped out. They can compete with the crappie there. The crappie won't wipe them out. And then once you start getting gizzard shad into the population, you've got a more preferred forage. So you're displacing crappie with gizzard shad.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's interesting.
And I've seen it happen a couple times. Again, only a couple times where they had crappie, no shad, then got shad, and the bass got better.
Yeah, I guess gizzard shad you have to really be careful with them. But if you do it right, they grow some monsters.
They're the gas, baby. But anything turbocharged,
yeah. I am curious to see what'll happen over the course of time with that lake with those chub suckers. Because, dude, they were everywhere. And, like, big ones, like 14-inch. I don't even really know. I don't know how big they get. I think that's about what they top out at.
I think so. I don't know. I've seen one that big, but
they're probably about 1.5 pounds. The biggest ones. But they were everywhere. That little ones, big ones, they were spawning in there, no problem. It was crazy. I've never seen that before. But
vegetation in there?
A lot of vegetation.
That's why.
Too much.
You get rid of that. It's that, and I think if you'll probably is it sandy soil? I think they prefer sand.
Yeah, it might be a little sandy. Like there's a big flat in the back that I'm sure is all accumulated sediment.
I'm going back a bajillion years, but there's something in the substrate about them.
Yeah, I wasn't really expecting to see that many of them, but it is a vegetation related thing. It's way too much.
I think their eggs are adhesive and they need that vegetation to lay their eggs. I bet if you clean that vegetation up, you drop their population down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're probably going to drop their population down a little bit.
Yeah.
It's too much. They can't use it, in the summer. It's bad now and we're 2 weeks into March.
Yeah.
Come June, the lake will
what's growing now anyway?
Fanwort.
Oh God.
So fun fact,
191.
Do what?
Hydrothol 191.
Yeah.
You ever mess with hydrothol?
I don't like hydrothol.
I don't either.
It kills everything.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll probably use Flume is a good option in that water quality. So we might use that with some other stuff. We'll see kind of what they want to do. But man, I forgot what I was going to say.
We're talking about substrate.
So it used to be, I think I don't see fanwort very often, not in private ponds. I think the reason it's in there is because it used to be part of a fishing club, the one that's in Texas and Oklahoma. And I have a feeling that it came in on a boat.
Or somebody brought it in and thought it would be a good idea to.
Yeah, one or the other. But I have seen every lake where outside boats come in, I have seen species that don't normally end up in ponds in the pond. Eurasian milfoil, hydrilla, you name it. They all outside boats from big lakes.
Yep.
Weird plants end up in there.
Yep.
And you usually cause a big problem.
No doubt. You gonna grass carpet or what are you gonna do?
Yeah, we're probably gonna do a little bit of everything. We're gonna do some grass carp. I know they don't really love fanwort, but they got nothing.
Put 20 per acre in there and watch what happens.
Yeah, they got nothing else to eat, so that's what they got. But then he's got some areas that are bad or where they want to swim, so we'll probably clean those up with the truckser first.
Yeah,
and then we'll just kind of treat everything and keep it. I don't want to get rid of the vegetation, but I want to keep it probably 10 feet off the shoreline all the way around. Right now, I think the whole lake will get grown over the way it's sitting right now. So yeah, we got some work to do on that, which isn't going to help your bass population either. Your bass relative weights. No,
it's not.
Not when you've got 75% coverage of aquatic vegetation.
That's bad. Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah. It's not there yet, but it's every bit of 35% covered, and we're in March.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, that's not good either.
No. But that's why those little suckers are everywhere.
I think and again, I'm racking my brain going back, and it's a fish that I never really saw, and the only time I ever saw it was at the coast, and I never managed a pond with them, but
Yeah,
they're in the books. We talked about it. We learned about it in school and stuff,
Yeah, I didn't really pay attention to them that much because they weren't normally in a situation that I was going to be in. So I was like,
The only reason it piqued my interest is because I'm the guy who went through fishery school with like a bass fisherman's mentality. So when anything came up about, wait a minute, where huge bass, what, I picked up on that.
well,
That's one thing I can say to everybody here. Don't expect to go to fishery school and have cool conversations like we're having right now.
No.
Nah.
But when we were out there surveying today, I was like, man, this made me think of. I heard you say it on a podcast. I don't remember with who. I think it was one of the Florida State biologists about the chub suckers in that one lake bayou and how it throws off big fish all the time. And I was like, man, they're everywhere in this lake. So then it was an interesting thing to see. But I almost wonder, it's going to be, once we start knocking the vegetation back, it's going to get interesting. I have a feeling they're going to start getting knocked back. I don't think they're very fast.
If my memory serves, they need that vegetation for their eggs to adhere to, I believe. If again, I might be making that up, but there's something with the vegetation and the chub sucker, and that's why they do so good in Rodman back here.
Okay, I mean that makes sense. I know some people that did some research on them at A&M, so I'll have to ask them what they know about them. But yeah, I was surprised how many there were. Like pretty much for every bluegill we got at least one, maybe two chub suckers. It was very strange.
That's interesting, definitely.
Yeah,
that'll be a good one to keep track of. I'll be interested to see how that one turns out.
Yeah, and well, we took out a lot of bass today, and he just bought the lake. It's been there for a long time, but he seems very interested in getting it back on track. So I think he's gonna do what needs to be done to fix it up. It doesn't have very good water quality. It's got a lot of things that need to get worked on, but it'll be very interesting to see with those chub suckers, what they do. It's like, man, should I start growing them?
My money is going to lie on the weed control is going to mess them up. But
I might have to intentionally leave some.
There's
like a marsh, the whole back end. So the lake's like 16 acres, but then there's probably another acre of like marshy, 1 foot deep, full of vegetation. So they might be there's got to be a creek or a tributary that comes through there. That's where they come from. Because I don't know how else they would have got in there.
Unless somebody just threw them in there. That's a possibility. But I don't know. You'd have to run that stream and see if it links up.
But to that point, usually when there's a stream or a creek, you get a lot of weird species. You get some like top minnows, some other weird.
Yeah, you're not seeing any of that.
None of that. Crappie, bass, red ear bluegill, and the chub suckers. Everywhere. It's strange. I'll have to send you the data when I get it.
Yeah, do that. That's cool. Well, now I said 48 minutes ago, I'm going to cut it off.
Yeah, that didn't seem like 48 minutes ago.
That didn't work out, did it?
No, it never does when we're on here. We get on a tangent and then it's like, 3 hours. Oh, oops.
Hey, but like you said, it's a good. I think we do a good job of tying it back into what we've already talked about. And there's no information on the internet like this that I'm aware of.
No.
That's why there's 2 people watching it right now, and I think there should be 2,000 people watching it right now. But,
we'll get there.
I hope so, and I'm not going to quit. I'm going to keep. You guys are screwing up my bass. They're mine. All right, I claim all of them in North America. All right, it's my responsibility to fix it. All right, so share and tell everyone because we have to help our fish.
Well, and this is the only way to get non-super generalized information, because when you post it, it has to be generalized. There's no other way to get it out there where people can understand it and relate to it.
Exactly. And I think maybe if I have a talent, that's my talent. I can help guys who don't understand the terminology or don't have any experience with it understand it.
Yeah,
And
no, I would agree.
it's
And that's why
just,
you've built a big following.
yeah, it's because I just helped everybody. Like I work for myself. So anybody who called me, I just helped them because I figured if they got help, and even if they couldn't pay me, they'll tell somebody and then I'll get more business. And that's exactly how it worked.
Yeah. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, every person who's been very, very successful, it's the same concept. It's not about who wants more money gets more money. It's whoever helps and solves more people's problems makes more money.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I don't want to put out there, I've shot my shot. I tried doing this. I didn't make $1 million managing fisheries. Okay. And I definitely don't want kids watching this to think that, oh, there's a bunch of followers, therefore there's a bunch of money, because there tends to be that correlation on the internet. And it's not like that here. Maybe it's like that in some other businesses, but it's not like that here. And I don't want anybody, especially with the cost of tuition these days. You
Yeah.
don't need to be going and getting, degrees and stuff that you don't understand what you're getting a degree in anymore.
Yeah. Go be a plumber, start a plumbing company and make
Absolutely. You'll do way better than us.
Yeah. This is
way better than us.
A field for if you love being outside, you love being in the outdoors, and you can be pretty successful in doing it, but you have to approach it from the mentality of trying to make a difference, not trying to make money. Because if the whole thing is about trying to make money, you're not going to make any money, and you're going to ruin your reputation, and then you're really not going to make any money.
Yeah.
So,
and I think too, I think there is a way to make a lot of money in ponds, but it's like you said, it's a future date at which point the general population understand, like, okay, the toilet's bad, call the plumber.
Yeah.
The light switch is bad, call the electrician. Oh, the algae's bad, call the pond guy.
Yeah.
It's not like that yet.
It's not, but it's a new industry, so it's going to get there with time. And I think the more publicity you can put to it on social media, the more people are going to realize that it's a thing. There's some guys out there that have we-do boats that have like 30,000 followers on all platforms. You can tell that they don't know the science by what they're posting, but you can't hate on the guys because they're bringing a lot of engagement to the industry. Bunch of young guys, so it's like, hey, I hope they keep doing it. I hope they get 1 million followers, because all it's going to do is help the whole industry grow.
They're not taking money from us.
No, it's
what I mean? That's just not. And especially when you look at how like regional it is.
Oh yeah.
Rex hits me up. He's in Georgia. I'm here. He's like, hey, you know somebody in Louisiana? Yeah, call Garrett.
There's
it's like
1.4 million ponds in Texas. At least they're actually doing a count right now, but at least 1.4 million ponds. That's a lot.
There's 1 million in Georgia.
Yeah. Louisiana is basically all water because it's below sea level pretty much. So, I mean, there's plenty to go around.
There is. And I think it just has to, once people understand what's possible with pond management.
Yeah.
And imagine that. Imagine it just if like 10% of pond owners just decided one day, you know what, we're going to listen to those guys and drain the lake and start it all over. How much money are you going to make?
Yeah, it's game on,
dude. And then how many big fish are you going to grow?
Yeah,
and what I mean?
It's just going to keep. Yeah. And now every business they build, every HOA, they have to have flood control. So there's all these ponds being built in cities. So even if you don't live in a rural area, you can do a lot of. Or you did the same thing. You run around. Those ponds are not as fun usually because they don't care about the fish, but there's a lot of.
I always approach those conversations. The best conversation that I approached to it in a homeowners meeting was, I understand you guys aren't bass fishermen. I am a bass fisherman though. And what you have to understand is it might not be important to you, but what is important to you is the value of the community.
Right.
the property value is important to you. And I can promise you, no matter what price you put on that house over there on the other side of the lake, if the man buying it is a bass fisherman and he can catch good bass here, he's going to give you the money.
Yeah. Well, and if you can advertise it as like a
He is
professional,
going to give you the money. And
yeah,
you guys have to take a few $1,000s in every year that's not even yours. It's homeowners' money that you can invest and put into your fish population. I promise you that's going to come back tenfold.
yeah.
And
No,
every single homeowner that listened to me came back, the president or whatever, came back a decade later or whatever and was like, dude, when we were trying to cut that fisheries budget on you, that would have been the biggest mistake. We've had so many kids fishing things, barbecues, meetings to get together to drop the Christmas trees off to create fish habitat. He goes, you have created an entire like family type environment around the pond.
oh, there's so
We
much
never would have had.
with all of that. It's endless. You just got to be creative, pretty much. Kids
Yep.
fishing events, what you name it. The only thing that limits what you can do is your creativity.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah. And I mean, you want to go back and talk about business with me? Okay. You know how many times I got fired?
I'm gonna guess 0. Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I've been let go twice, and that was simply due to the HOA disbanding and just simply not having
Lake management
money for anything anymore.
Yeah.
Much less lakes. I got let go a couple times in situations, small homeowners associations like that. But no, my apartments, my homeowners, my guys that that weren't a single pond owner that moved away and I couldn't work there anymore. Obviously, I wouldn't count that. But no, to say, Shan, we're firing you due to incompetence and not doing your job properly. That never happened.
Yeah.
30 years, never, not one time.
That's a good thing. Did you ever have to do it the other way where you had to tell people, I'm not going to work for you anymore? I'm sorry.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah.
It took me a while. It took me a while because when you work alone, you have to have money. You have but once I got into a situation where I didn't have to have, I've quit a lot.
Yeah, we haven't had it often, but there's been a few times where it's like you just sorry, we can no longer do business with you.
That happens.
Yeah,
for many reasons.
Yeah,
it happens.
They're not always necessarily like. It's usually a compounding series of events where it's like, okay.
Oh, I can visualize what you're going through.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Show up with a bunch of stuff, and then they change their mind while you're there putting it out.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah,
like,
I know. I've had to deal with all that kind of crap.
Yeah,
too.
it's like that's fine if you don't want it, but don't call me again in a week to say that you want it. Just
Yeah.
No,
I'll
deliver it to your door.
Yeah, and that's one thing that I think probably played to my advantage business wise is I was just one guy and with a little bit of help, and I wasn't. If you called me, you got me.
Yeah,
no, the secretary, and then run around and the email and all that crap. If you called me at 5 PM and said there's something wrong out here at 5:35, I was at that pond whether I needed to be there or not.
Yeah,
No,
there's a lot of value in being a smaller business because whoever they speak to is who shows up. It's not like
that's very valuable, and I can promise you, for anybody out there in that situation, whatever business that you're in, if you go to sell that business, you're going to have a problem. People are not going to like it, and you're going to think, "No, I've got a good relationship. I've worked with these people 20 years. It's not going to be a big deal."
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. You're going to lose clients if you try to sell out.
If you've been working for them for 20 years.
Yeah, and I don't know why, because even the situation I was in, I was just merging companies and still doing the work. I was still coming there. All they were doing was sending a check to a different guy.
Yeah.
I had to do that for 2 years to get to finalize the sale of the business. There was a lot of people just left right then.
Yeah, no,
I'm not doing business with him. I'm doing business with you. And if I'm not doing business with you, I'm not doing business with any of that. And I was like, okay, there's nothing I can do about that.
No, I think it happens a lot. And that's kind of to the point of the industry's growing, there's a lot of investment companies buying pond management companies now. They see what's coming, and so they're buying a bunch of them. So it's going that way. Yeah. I don't know what that's going to do to the companies that they buy as far as what's going to happen with them.
Because irrelevant. I mean, if you guys want to start a real big industry and then lose all your corporate money, I'll be glad to jingle back.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean?
I don't know what'll happen as far as like, you know, the main people in charge don't know ponds, but I mean, it happens in other industries, so it might work out okay. We'll see.
Like you said, man, the more eyes that are on the industry, the more people understand that there's people they can get in touch with, the more money we'll make. Yeah, it's infancy. It's been like this for 30 years for me. You know, I've been saying the same. I had this conversation in the 90s.
Really?
Man, most people figure out this. Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. I'm curious if we'll have this conversation again 20 years from now.
I hope I'm still here.
Be like, well, and we thought 20 years ago we would be here, but we still not. So
not because I thought 25 years ago I was in the same boat I'm sitting in right now. I went to college, I got a degree, I worked in the field, and nobody believes a word I say.
Yeah. Well, that's a bad way of putting it.
Literally until you take it and grow the fish in front of them live on Instagram.
Yeah.
Now they'll believe you.
That's why I think what we did today was good with all the numbers and the data, because you can look at it and go, oh man, what he's been saying is right. I can literally see that graph change to that graph and that graph change to that graph. Crap. And I'm at this one over here.
Yeah. So I hope, I can only pray that we will have that much critical thinking skills after that.
Well, yeah, I don't know. There's not much more you can do past that other than put them on the shock boat and show them.
No, and again, you're right. There's not much you can do past that. And I'll quote Cool Hand Luke, some man you just can't reach.
Yep. That's a good quote.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's wrap it up. We just went past 2 hours. Before we get sidetracked again and go
it ended up 3.
Let's go. Let's wrap it up with old Cool Hand Luke.
All right, that works for me. Thanks for having me on, man.
Anytime. We'll have you back here real soon. And thanks for bringing all the data and field experience and knowledge and informing everyone.
Yeah, we'll do it again with something new next time.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys. Appreciate you listening. Talk to you later. And